Okay, so we are beginning the chakra series. I've done this before with a group of people where we started from the root chakra and worked up to the crown chakra. Each class event was focused on one chakra because there's a lot to say about each of the chakras. And this is based on the Western seven chakra model. There are lots of different energy systems you can find throughout the world in cultures like India, Egypt, Tibetan cultures, Hebrew, Chinese, and even Mayan cultures have energy systems, energy chakras that they see in the body. And then in Chinese culture, they have meridians, which are a little different than chakra centers. Chakra centers are more associated with the glands in our body. They're actually kind of located in regions where there's a lot of nerve output from our nervous system. Whereas the meridians, which is used in acupuncture and acupressure therapies, is energy lines of channels that move through our body that are not associated with any kind of biological system. I do believe they work together, that they're all part of the energy body, but the chakras are more centralized and they're said to be wheels of light. That's what it means. Chakra in Sanskrit means wheels of light. And they transform energy, they emit energy, they digest energy. And what we'll see through each of the chakras is there's different archetypal themes. And really, there's different levels of our identity in each of these chakras. So as we start to work through them, it's actually a development process. And starting at the root is essential because the root is foundational to all of the other chakras. And you'll see that today when we talk about the root chakra. These systems that we find in ancient cultures vary in location, in the chakras vary in location in the body, they vary in like size, and they vary in like theory around them. But what we see overlap in most of the cultures is that there's 7 major central line chakras, and that's what we're going to talk about today. And this is what you'd find when you research chakras online and New Age movement and kind of the modern understanding of chakras. So they reflect different aspects of the human experience. And when we have intellectual understanding and education about what each of these archetypal themes of each of the chakras are, it's like we have a key to understanding ourselves on a deeper level. And one thing that most of the cultures that have an energy system in their mystery teachings is, or the ancient scriptures or documents, is that they see it as a pathway towards enlightenment, a pathway of ascension, a pathway of spiritual development. The chakras are like the stepping stones. And even in the yogic culture, they see the chakras as actually a literal pathway from the root to the crown through Kundalini opening experiences of ascension, liberating oneself from the wheel of reincarnation, basically. And so understanding the themes of the chakras, understanding your energy body, understanding how to use visualization and intention and how to work with your energy body is something that I think everybody should know, because it's so foundational to understanding ourselves and the way our energy works. And so as you start to learn the things about each of the chakras, you'll have more skills, more tools, more wisdom and knowledge about where certain issues in your life may be stemming energetically, how to work with your energy if you feel like it's stuck or stagnant or out of alignment, and really help to get your energy flowing, to be feeling good and health in your mind, in your psychology, and in your spiritual connection. There are a lot of studies on frequency, which are really heavy in, verbiage that I'm not going to use here. I'm going to use frequency and vibration. And that's what we hear a lot in the New Age movement, right? Like, oh, raise your frequency, raise your vibe, high vibes only, blah, 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 blah. And there's actually truth to that. So when it comes to the chakras, they have associated colors and sounds with them. And what's really interesting is that the ancient texts have depicted these chakras with certain sounds and certain colors and certain mantras, that now that we have this amazing science to actually record the energy system, validates what the yogis knew many, many years ago before we had science. So it's just time and time again, science is just confirming what these deeply contemplative, meditative people understood about the body. So there is this innate wisdom that when we go within, we start to actually become aware of these systems in our body. That's part of the meditation process of awakening, is understanding that we are energy, that there's energy moving through us and how that's working. But really, the raise your vibe ascension, all of the language about ascension is somewhat true. So studies have shown when they do certain measures of electromagnetic fields of various people, that the traditional normal person vibrates at about 250 hertz, which is the same as the heart chakra. So psychics, their electromagnetic field in hertz measures about twice as much, if not more than that. So they said between 400 and 800 hertz. While trance specialists, so specialists who channel higher beings, angels, group consciousness, people like Abraham Hicks, right, vibrate between 800 and 900 hertz. And mystics, yogis, and gurus, these are people who spend a lot of time in meditation, contemplation, isolated, alone, who are deeply in their inner world most of the time, are vibrating above 900 hertz. And each of these hertz obviously are going up into the upper chakras. So if the heart's at 250, like at the root chakra is the slowest energy. It is associated with the physical world, matter, which is very slow and dense. As we move up the chakra system, like to the heart, it raises in frequency. And then as we move up to the crown chakra, it goes up even higher. So the trance specialists, the yogis, the mystics, and the gurus are vibrating at like the crown chakra level, which makes sense. That's our spiritual connection to source. So that's like, I believe, a sign that that's where they're predominantly operating at. And so it does support the theory that psychic development, spiritual development, and the ascension process, Kundalini coming up, is an upward trajectory that goes up to a higher frequency. However, I want to preface that a lot of the ancient scriptures had a bias against the body, that they believe that spiritual development includes abandoning the primal instincts and pleasures of the body, which is a very one-sided view of spirituality. These days, there's a lot more somatic awareness that the body can actually be a gateway into healing and to ascension. And so we're recognizing that there's not only an upward path trajectory of raising your frequency, but there's also a downward trajectory. And in the book that I got a lot of the information out of, called Wheels of Light by Anadea Judith, which I really recommend, she talks about how there is a manifesting current, which goes down, and there's a liberating current. So when we talk about Kundalini, we're talking about liberating our physical body, our emotional body, of any of the unresolved stuff, the karmic stuff from past lives, from generational stuff, from cultural patterns, from our personal life experiences, liberating anything that's stuck and stagnant, traumas basically, out of our bodies so that we can be vibrating at a pure level, right? We're clean and we're clear, is one aspect. The other aspect is the downward current, which is the manifesting current. So this is how we bring our spiritualized self into the physical world and we create, because we're essentially here to be creators. So that's kind of like the neglected side of the ancient spiritual texts. They talk a lot about liberation and ascension, but they don't necessarily talk about how to live on heaven on earth in the present moment and really create your life, with home, family, domestic things, right? Like a lot of ancient scriptures are based on people who isolated themselves from culture, from society. So it's kind of a one-sided view. So this is where we're seeing, like, when people talk about the rise of the divine feminine, that's what they're talking about. They're talking about the rise of the feminine, which is learning how to be in the physical body, enjoy the physical world things, the earthy element of pleasure, of our physical senses, of food, of sex, of the things that have to do with the body that we don't have when we're just spiritualized. Like, it's kind of funny because I've always felt this to be true when I was reading about spiritual stuff. It's like, why is everyone so hyper focused on liberating and getting to like pure spiritual bliss when that's where we go when we die, when we leave our physical body? It's like, that's where we go. Why would we come into a body and just strive to get back there again? It just doesn't make any sense. So I do prescribe more to the divine feminine route, where it's like, yes, liberate yourself from all of the karmic stuff out of your energy, but also then be empowered to like create in this world beauty, harmony, peace, things that are needed in this world so badly, right? To not neglect the point that we're here in the physical world for a reason. So there's these two streams of development. We're moving from the root to the crown. because essentially to clearly manifest, you really do have to clear your channel of all of the gunk that's preventing you from clearly creating in your world. That has been my experience. So even the yogis, the mystics, the trance specialists, and the psychics who are vibrating a higher frequency, they're working with a higher frequency, but they're still able to manifest and work in the physical world just from a different place of being within themselves. So it's the idea that understanding the chakra system, working through the chakra system, gives you a deeper understanding of the multidimensional layers of yourself, of how to work with your energy, how to liberate yourself, and then how to use that in the physical world to create the life that you want, which is what we call embodiment. It's like liberate all of the junk so you can be your full self, your true self, your authentic self. You might hear that a lot out in the world too. That's what they mean, clearing all the stuff that is actually not yours or not aligned with your true soul self. And then being your soul self and embodying that in the physical world. It's embodiment. It's not just ascension for the sake of ascension, basically like escapism, which I do feel like a lot of the ancient scriptures and yogis that isolated from society, it was a kind of a form of escapism. And I do think that there is, obvious benefits of that, because they're raising the consciousness of the field of everyone around them. And it's easier to do outside of society, obviously, because there's a lot of heavy stuff in society. Acknowledging that we're an energy and not just a body also takes into perspective that our environment is always interacting with our chakra system and ultimately pulling and tugging at us, and we're trying to attune and acclimate and fit in. And so if we're surrounded by chaotic energy, our chakras will also feel chaotic. So that's also, I think, why a lot of contemplatives would isolate themselves away from the chaoticness of society into the mountains, into nature where there's harmonious energy, because it's easier for them to get into that space. But I think the beauty of it is you attain a knowledge and understanding of how to raise your frequency and then bring it back to the people, right? Bring it back to the people, bring it back to society. That is like a full cycle of transformation, I do believe. The hero's journey is what they talk about in the psychology, which is bringing it back to the people. If we just do the work for ourselves, it's like we don't really make the impacts that we could. We are interconnected. We are basically pack animals. We're meant to be connected with one another. So the whole isolated spiritual thing, I feel like, is kind of dying. There's value to it, but it's like, why would we come to be here in the physical body if we weren't here to live and enjoy the physical experience? Because there is so much beauty to enjoy in the physical body, which we're going to talk about when we talk about the root chakra. So the ancients said that physical disease, illness, is first started on a subtle body level, which means our energy system. So if we have stagnant, stuck, misaligned energy, and it kind of stays that way without us healing or working through it, then it begins to actually physicalize in our body and we start to have physical symptoms. So it's believed that if we continuously work on our energy body, it's like preventative medicine. If we continue to work on energy body to ground and clear and really align our chakras and be attuned to ourselves, that we will prevent illness and disease from happening to us. This is what is greatly neglected in our, modern medical model. Although these days they're incorporating more Eastern ideas like acupuncture, Chinese medicine is becoming more acceptable. Addressing just the physical body is not enough, especially because the whole theory about understanding us as energy as primary, we're energy first before physical matters. So we need to address the physical second, not first. So in the Kundalini awakening process, it is believed that the root chakra is where it all starts, that the root chakra is the first level that needs to really be freed and liberated in order to move up the chakras. And this is kind of in alignment with Maslow's hierarchy of needs, if you've ever heard of that. In psychology, it's like a triangle, and on the bottom it talks about physical safety, having shelter, access to food and water. Those are all the root chakra things. It's like if we're starving, if we're dehydrated, if we're malnourished, if we're dying out in the elements, like we're not going to be self-actualizing or doing the best we can in the world, because our body is in desperate need. It's a survival mode. So survival is the first level of consciousness in the chakra system that needs to be addressed in order to really move up. Although this is debated because it's like, well, does it mean that someone who is in poverty or is impoverished or malnourished can't be spiritually ascending? That's not true. It just means that it's a lot easier to have a strong foundation of safety, of security, of stability before you move up the chakra system. There is all kinds of other energy channels, which I'm not going to get into with the Kundalini. There's the Sushumna, which is the central line. There is the feminine serpent. There's the masculine serpent. If you think about the caduceus, which is the image that we actually use on our medical in medicine, we see it on hospitals, we see it on ambulances. It is the symbol of medicine. It actually is representative of this ancient knowledge of the Kundalini. The masculine and feminine serpents coming up a staff with wings at the top. Those are all the energy channels. So isn't it interesting that like our medical model has this image everywhere and yet they don't acknowledge the energy body? Anyway, so there's this spiritual development process. So the root is the first step. We really need to work at the root first.